Welcome back, Steeler fans, to another edition of the SteelerFury.com podcast. I'm your host, Jeremy Coleman. You know me as Smith is Smoking on the Best of George, joined by my colleagues, as always, Corey Karbowski, you know him as Corey39, and Will Masek, you know him as Bradshaw to Ben. Gentlemen, we live to fight another week where Mike Tomlin still might pull out the most obscure record ever of being never having a losing season. You know, if we would have thought of, 2 months ago, we thought this was a laughable pursuit. And sure enough, we're right back to where we always are. We're right back to being right at 500, potentially going over 500, trying to find our way into a playoff mess, but of course, needing some help to get there.
The standard is the standard.
Yeah, the standard is the standard. That's the perfectly put into words, Corey. Just this past game, it was nice to see us with our backs against the wall. And, I think the bright spot is Kenny Pickett stepping up and making some big time throws on the last drive of the game for the Steelers to deliver a winning performance. I mean, Corey, what more can we start to say about the legend of Kenny Pickett?
Oh man, so me and Will have been his detractors for a little while now, and he played phenomenal out of structure, and I think he played a good game. But I have to bring him down to earth a little. He played a great game. There are still some issues, Steelers fans. He's not this perfect QB prospect. Yeah, he's not this perfect NFL quarterback. He still has some big questions on his work inside of the pocket, but that's what the offseason's for. Right now, he's playing pretty good football when you look at his play as a whole, and that was a great game from him.
Kenny's not perfect? What are you talking about? You a hater? What, you got something against? Did he bang your girlfriend? Like, what happened? No, I'm not. I wouldn't even call myself necessarily a detractor. I'm just like, I like to see the development, and I like to see this, sort of a step at a time to see things that I like. I'm not ready to jump, to marry the first girl I ever kissed. I mean, I feel like that from the beginning, the front office was like ready to marry Kenny Pickett before he was even drafted. And I feel like the fan base has sort of adopted that. And on one hand, I get it. It's like they don't want to be without. A lot of fans don't even remember 10 years ago or 5 years ago, really. So you have to keep that in mind when you hear people say. The plays at the end of the game against Baltimore, I mean, he made a couple of good throws the previous week in the last drive. But the plays on this drive were really out of this world, outside of structure, as you said. I mean, I think that's the thing I said even on the night, that I'm for the moment not concerned about other stuff, but just about the out of structure and trying to make something happen late in the game. Love it. Like that, the getting out of the pocket and finding Freiermuth and those guys being on the same page, finding Stephen Smith, Steven Sims, rather, who I'm sure was not his first read on that play. Pretty nice. And then the improv and the throw to Najee in the corner. I mean, all that stuff is, the kind of stuff that he did at Pitt that we saw it and we said, well, is he going to be able to translate that into the NFL? I'm not sure. And at least for one night and for a couple of weeks, yeah, he's looked pretty good, with the late game magic. On the other hand, the stuff before that in the last few weeks has not really been that encouraging. But I think it's all part of the process. It's like you can both be crazy about what he did at the end of the game and also wondering, would he even have a chance to do that in a game against a better team or better quarterback, because he didn't really put that many points on the board, or the offense wasn't able to do it, right? And some of that is they call plays like when they get a penalty and first and goal from the 2 and they get a 5-yard penalty. It's like everybody on, even television announcers, are like, yeah, well, that's it now. There goes their chance to score a touchdown from the 7. It's like, that's wild to me. But for a time, I think it's definitely worth praising Kenny for what he did do well and what he does appear to be good at. And it was really, hey man, they they viewed it as being an opportunity to stay alive, and they sure did.
Yeah, I guess, I guess I'm just hopeful because you see these glimpses of greatness from Kenny Pickett. And I guess, I allow myself to indulge, man, if we just had an offense that allowed him to do these things more often. I think that's where I kind of come down on the line right now, because we don't ask him to do this stuff until our backs are against the wall. We have no other options or whatever. And I mean, we all saw it, that 2 minutes, 40 seconds left to go. I can't hear you, Matt Canada. Screw it. We're going my plays the rest of the way. And, that's when he rips off that big pass to Pat Freiermuth, for the big game to that really kind of at that point, I was like, I think we're actually going to be able to pull this off, because when we started with the ball with like 4 or so minutes left, I was like, okay, this is a little bit more Matt Canada's pace. We could methodically kind of work it down and get in, touchdown range potentially. But, we wasted a lot of time on the drive. I'm not exactly sure that there were times where our clock management was not great on that drive, especially to start, knowing that if we were going to take that methodical approach of getting down there, we needed to run it with a little more urgency. We just didn't seem to have that right away. But as soon as Kenny Pickett picked it up, with that 2 minutes and 40 seconds left, that's kind of where I was like, I think we're going to pull this out. I think we're going to be okay. And then sure enough, the great improv play, with I can't remember who was rushing Dan Moore on that side of the field or whatever, but just dipping out and finding Najee like that, just some really nice football. Not to mention, since I brought him up, Najee Harris is finally looking like a first round running back pick to me. I think that was probably the first game, in these stretch of games where I said, man, I don't feel as bad as I did before that we spent our first round pick on this guy. He seems to be almost reckoning back to his Alabama days. He's almost getting stronger with the more carries he's getting. He said that at Alabama, that he's built to take on a load like that. I mean, I think you're seeing it late in the season. He almost looks quicker and more refreshed, as crazy as that sounds. He just looks more spry in December. I don't know why that is, but he's been looking great. Jaylen Warren did great. The ground game is the best I've ever seen it against a Baltimore Ravens team in a long damn time. I can't tell you the last time we've had that much success running the ball. I know they had no Calais Campbell or Michael Pierce or whatever, but just encouraging, to see that happen. So, I mean, what are some other things you guys like from this game, or if you want to touch on that as well?
So, I mean, we in most of Steelers Nation have been big fans of Mark Robinson, and we finally got to see him on the field this week. And man, he plays exactly how you expect him to play, how you want him to play, how you want a Steelers linebacker to play. I mean, he throws his body around. Like when he hits you, you get stood up. He is exactly what the doctor ordered against the Ravens. I mean, I'm not sure. I mean, I know because we saw it happen. If we start Jack and Bush, we don't hold them to the yards per carry that we held them to. So Mark Robinson finally getting to play. I mean, when I saw him out there on that first play, I was pumped up. Our ears was like, yes. I was like, Mark Robinson. But another thing that really caught my eye was the overall defensive creativity that we used this game, and we came out in a 6-2 front. I mean, that's borderline unheard of in this modern era of the NFL. I mean, that's like 70s and 60s football right there. 6-2 front, our 2 backup linebackers on paper, and then DeMarvin Leal jumping across the formation every play. We're stunting him all across the board. He looked phenomenal. He looked very, very good, even if he might not have had the individual numbers to really back it up. He was disruptive.
Yeah, I mean, I love the wrinkle of what they kept calling a 6-down lineman, but it was kind of like, instead of it being a bare front where you covered the center, they basically left the middle open, and they stuck Mark Robinson in there, and then they had 3 defensive linemen kind of spaced out to each side to sort of both contain and avoid getting beat to the outside runs. And then they were like, hey, you want to run up the middle, then you're going to run into Cam Hayward and Mark Robinson and Damar Hamlin, So I thought that strategy was great. My only problem with it is that they didn't do something like that in the previous game when they had the Ravens had the 3rd string quarterback in, and everybody on the planet knew that they were basically going to run the ball, and they never really played like to suffocate the run game. They still were in there kind of like what they might have done against Lamar Jackson, or even against normal, like they're just basic defense. So that just questions, it just makes me wonder, like, do they needed an entire week of practice to throw an extra defensive lineman or two at the Ravens? Like, I don't know. It seemed obvious to me the previous time around. I was even more surprised that they did it this time around, because I was like, wow, if they didn't do it in the last game when it was sort of desperate. I was amazed that they chose that as their strategy, but I guess we can't complain. They used it, it worked. I also was like amazed that the Ravens didn't react to that by, doing something other than running straight into it for the entire night. Like, I don't get the Ravens plan at all. I didn't understand the Raiders defensive plan last week. I definitely didn't understand the Ravens offensive plan this week. Like a play action and throw the ball a little bit downfield once in a while to someone other than Mark Andrews seemed like maybe something you should try to do against that front.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's very encouraging. I think we've seen this defense start to do different things. You guys mentioned, being able to play Mark Robinson, mentioning being able to play Leal, just a very different defensive approach in this game. I haven't seen Pittsburgh really do too many wrinkles like this really over the last 2 or 3 years. So it's encouraging that they're not willing, or that they are sort of willing to go outside the box, with packages and stuff. Because I think for the longest time, the Steelers have been obsessed with this idea of the big nickel, of what they'd always call it, with our 2 down defensive tackles, our 2 outside linebackers, and play nickel with 2 linebackers and an extra nickel corner or whatever, whether that be a safety or whatever. And boy, we get gashed. I mean, if we would have tried that this game, we would have lost it, But I mean, it's just encouraging to me that it seems like we finally woke up a little bit and decided, no, we need to be able to dominate these certain matchups. I mean, and DeMarvin Leal, my God, I did not realize how athletic this kid really is. Now, I don't know what weight he's playing at, because, when he started off at Texas A&M, he was more interior. He weighed a little bit more. His last season, he played a little bit more end. He lost some weight. Then he supposedly bulked up, a bunch when he first got to Pittsburgh or whatever. But I mean, if he's anywhere near 300 pounds and running around like he is, that's an incredible athlete right there. So I'm really excited about his future after this game. Not to mention Corey, you mentioned Mark Robinson. So it's just nice to see some young guys that actually really contributed. And if I think I read correctly, this game was the most the Steelers have played their rookies all year long.
Yeah, and once again, that's my point. Why do we have to wait for a must-win against Baltimore with 3 weeks to go in the season or 2 weeks to go in the season, right? It's like, that's what I was saying if you start the season with the mentality of the biggest thing we can do is develop and get better and find out what we have in our young players, then like, don't wait till week 17 to play them. I realize injuries are an issue and blah, 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 but like, if you're so concerned about your record that you can't get better or can't take basically take a risk, play the guys who appear to have more talent and worry about their growing pains as you go. Like, I'm not sure the results, I'm not sure how many games they won or lost different than they would have playing younger guys who have more upside. That's all I wanted to say.
Right. So, but it's just nice to see some young pieces out there, that we're going to be seeing for the, the foreseeable future. Leal's going to be starting by de facto next year, and honestly, I think Mark Robinson's already there at that stage too. Cause Devin Bush, see you later, kid. I mean, played all I think Corey said before we jumped on, like maybe 5 defensive snaps all game long. Man, his career in Pittsburgh is toast, Miles Jack still another week where he didn't play. So hard to know what Pittsburgh's really going to do there too, because they can save $8 million cutting him, next year if they don't want to try to lower his cap hit with a restructure, if they think he's a piece of the future or not. But not to get too far down the road, but just nice to see some rookies actually shine. And I have to throw another one out to George Pickens. What a hell of a catch over the middle in contested areas. Just another play where, Kenny Pickett showed off, but good Lord, George Pickens, we could ever get an offensive coordinator that knows how to use you. Like, I think Justin Jefferson type vibes, from George Pickens. I think he's that talented. He could be just as deadly. So be fun to see what this offense can do with a legitimate coordinator. I don't know how many times I can say that.
But Corey, let me throw this at you because you're, one of the biggest opponents of Matt Canada as offensive coordinator. If Mike Tomlin is still the coach and he still selects the offensive coordinator and he still tells them what to do next year, how much different do you think the Steelers' offense would look?
I think it looks pretty much the same. I mean, even if we draft better players, here's the thing. Like, here's what I think kind of the big issue with Matt Canada is, where it isn't necessarily that he doesn't know how to design plays. He is probably a good play designer, even at NFL average, when you look at the full scope, everything that he has. The big issue is he has no clue how to call plays. Like, that's really what it is. He can design plays and, he can put plays out there. But when we run the same plays over and over again and we don't show any variety, one, teams are going to catch up to it. And two, we become, it's pretty much, I was going to say we become predictable, but the film is what the film is. Like, if we run the same things over and over, even if it's in a different shell, then it's just not going to work. There's times where he calls plays and guys get open and we simply don't execute. Like, that's how it is in every offense. My biggest gripe with him is really that it's just the same thing over and over and over and over again. And that's just not going to be sustainable. Like, how often do you ever watch the Chiefs offense be like, damn, like they just ran that play? And then,
right.
watch the Steelers and we ran split zone and it worked this game. I complained about it all game. It worked this game, but I don't think I've seen a team ever run split zone as much as we have and averaged like under 4 yards a carry on it.
Okay, but they were killing it in the run game. Somebody explain to me why they didn't run play action off of that. It's like, are they so risk averse that they're like, yeah, we're getting 4 or 5 yards every time we run the ball, so why would we throw it? Like, that's really.
I don't think they trust the offensive linemen to hold up that long in pass protection. I think it's the same BS that we were fed last year or whatever, when Ben was even playing. Oh, they don't like to do play action because Ben's not quick enough under center or whatever. But it's like we have a young quarterback now who can actually run around and make stuff happen, and we never go to the well. So, I think it's just a criticism of Matt Canada's offense that we just don't use it not anywhere near enough. I think if you look at the league average, I think the league average on like play action is like 43% or whatever. Like, that's how often a play action pass or something to that effect is run. And we probably, average that maybe 5% a game.
If you're a person who thinks that you have to set up play action with the effective running game, the game against the Ravens was like the dream scenario. It's like they're never going to run it better than that as long as we live. So, not significantly anyway. So the thing is, with that kind of running attack, if then you're not, like, they put up 6 points before the last drive. They were totally dominating the Ravens in the run game. Those guys were ready to go home on every running play, right? And they didn't have an answer for it. They didn't have an adjustment. They didn't have a will. They didn't have something, right? They just missed those 2 guys in the middle and it killed them. And we did nothing to try to leverage that into points. Points is the point of the game, right? That's what your offense is supposed to do. And I think they're just way more concerned with, physically dominating them for the attitude of dominating them, and then adding to that, the clock and possessing the football and keeping it away from them. But it's like, man, if you don't score more than 6 points doing that, then what's it worth? Like, it worked in this game because they're playing their second string quarterback and you pretty much shut down their run game and whatever. But I think you got to at least once in a while try and score some points. It's concerning.
Well, I have an answer for that, and it's due to the fact that I really feel if we pulled up our numbers on our run plays, over 35% of them have to be out of split zone. And if it was another run play, I almost wouldn't care as much. But the thing that's been driving me insane all year with split zone is that the concept of split zone is you have your guy where the ball is going. He comes across the formation. He gets some movement that way. and then he blocks or he runs the route. And the reason why I've been banging my head all year about the split zone that we're running is that there hasn't been a single time all year we have hit that flat coming out. You can go back, look at any play where we run split zone. Just look up Steelers highlights. There will be 1 or 2 in there, and look at how wide open the flat man is. And it's because we haven't thrown it all year. And then the issue is if you're not thrown to the flat, the running back's going to be in a pile of trash inside. You can only have 3 receivers running routes on the exterior, which means it's going to take time to develop. You have none of your interior guys getting out in space on routes. So it's going to be tough to really get an effective play action with split zone, at least, which is mostly what we run on offense out of the running game, if you're not going to hit the flat, because that'll open up, where the flat's running to, that'll open up a seam or a drag behind it. There's a number of reasons why you want to hit that flat. And that's why I've really just been bashing my head into a wall, because we don't hit it.
Yeah, it's just that thing of like, we don't use plays to work into other plays or use them to build on. It's just like, we call this, it worked, call it some more, doesn't work, call something else. But there isn't like a plan, it seems like. I don't know. It's been that way for years though. So, I just don't know how else to, complain about it. I've run out of complaints in 15 years.
Yeah, we could probably devote a whole episode to us complaining about the Steelers or whatever, just little things we've complained about over the years, this year.
But they won and they're still in it for a playoff spot. How amazing is that? I mean,
yeah, it's incredible
how they got
considering
there.
where we were.
I don't care if it's because the league is mediocre and everything else. It's still kind of nuts.
Yeah, it's nuts that we're, like I said at the beginning, we're right back to where we've been. It seems like every year for the past 2 or 3 years, we find a way to win, just enough games to where we're in consideration. We can't get in quite on our own merit, need a little bit of help. But it just seems every year Pittsburgh finds a way. And you got to give, Mike Tomlin some credit there. This team some credit. This team could have given up when they were 2-6. You could have had veterans say this team in this season is lost. I'm going to protect myself. I'm not going to, go 100% every time. I'm going to make sure I'm healthy for next year. But this team never really gave up. I think the team believes in Kenny Pickett, that he can make plays. We've seen it these past 2 weeks where he makes plays. They find ways to win games, even it's the most ludicrous ways sometimes, but it just seems to happen for this team. So, got to give him credit there. Isn't like we've been forcing a bunch of turnovers this past few weeks either. We've just been lining up, and for the lack of a better term, we've been kicking ass. Whoever is lined up across from us, it's been 1000% effort. It's been the hustle and no one giving up on a play. So got to give the team credit where credit's due. Since we're on the topic of effort, Cameron Hayward playing like a man with his hair on fire, but what a load of crap on that penalty that gave them their only touchdown score of the game. That was the biggest pile of shit. Excuse me, Steeler fans, but that's the biggest pile of shit I've seen on a flag all year long. He's laying down and the Ravens defender pulls him further into the pile, and when he tries to get up, he's the one that's flagged for it. That's just ridiculous. For all the ability for refs now to go in and correct calls real quick, you really wish they could almost go in and correct these dumb foul calls or whatever. It's like, no, that was, he was just getting up off the pile. It's not some dumb penalty that's going to ruin a game. And sure enough, that's kind of what it felt like, because it kind of felt like all the wind in our sails got taken out when, that touchdown pass to Will Likely happened with it was 12 seconds left on the clock. What do you guys think about that?
Can I give you 3 things on this?
Yeah.
The first is, I've been saying for a month since the bye that the Steelers have gotten every call in every game. They basically not 100% true, but they have gotten golden calls from the officials, some really bad penalties called on the opponent, and some really, some obvious penalties the Steelers committed that didn't get called. this game was like they tried to make up for all of them in one game. That's one. Number two, vet move on the part of the offensive lineman for the Ravens, because apparently what Hayward got flagged for was contact with the official, and he got pulled into the official. So that's kind of amazing. So, chapeau to him. I don't know. I'm not sure which one of those guys it was, but that's a pretty vet move right there. And the third thing is, this only gave them 1st and goal at the 7, which, as we all know, is too far to get a touchdown. 1st and goal from the 7, especially with that little time left in the half. So, if it were the Steelers and they got 1st and goal in the 7, they got excuses for why they only got 3 points out of that. So I'm just saying.
Yeah, but I mean, Corey, any thoughts on that play? I mean,
I just know I was saying some not things that I should say on the show.
choice words, understandable
Yeah.
frustration. I get it.
Are you going to try to get away with this move, Corey? You're going to file that away.
What'd you say?
You're going to try to get away with this move, or are you going to file that away next time you're in
Oh,
the pile?
yes. Oh, yeah. Yeah. All
Some
the
extra
times
point,
when
just
I'm in the
pull the guy
pile, that's a long snap. I'm going to make sure to shove them into the ref.
That's what we do here at Steeler Fury.
I'm
We
just
tend
so
to-
strong.
We tend to encourage behavior on this show. With that being said, is there anything else you guys want to touch on this Ravens game real quick before we move on to some other stuff here?
Yes, I do. Two things about our specialist world. So one thing is
We're going to
that
drink. Be right back, guys.
one thing is that Presley Harvin, so he got a lot of flack for a bad punt a few weeks ago, and I'll address that on my second point, but he had a great game. I mean, 49.5 is a big time game from a punter in a game like that. But my second thing to mention is I hate to do this because, I'm a long snapper myself, but Christian Kuntz has had a bad last 5 weeks of the season. He's responsible for 2 for certain of Chris Boswell's missed field goals. And yeah, because it's a big issue for kickers when you throw inside, and not to get too into the nitty gritty, but when you throw inside, the kicker can't see the ball. So he kind of just has to trust it's there. Yeah, he's done that twice. So he's responsible for about 2 of his misses. He's been high on a few punts. I would not be surprised at all if we have another long snapper next year, but I know for sure there will be a competition.
Well, tune in. By the way, next week, Corey is going to host the Long Snapper Hour. Now, you should the new podcast where it's going to be really. No, I'm just kidding. Actually, it's great to have insights for something that most people don't think about at all when they watch a game. Like
I could definitely talk for an hour about it.
Yeah. No, I think it's great, and I think you make a good point. It's like it's easy to judge the kickers and the punters about the stuff they do when they make mistakes because you can see what they do. But most people don't notice the mistakes that the other specialists, that guy who long snaps the football, unless he's James Harrison and he puts it over.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank God we don't have anything of that. I do think it's worth knowing that Christian Kuntz is an exclusive rights free agent. So, I mean, if the Steelers do want to bring him back, they can bring him back on the super cheap. But, I mean, we've definitely seen the whole, 2 dogs, 1 bone trick with Mike Tomlin. I would definitely, Corey, you said it. I would definitely expect someone to be in camp next year and challenging for that spot, especially, as the layman here, as far as special teams go, for you to say, that he's been responsible for 2 of Boswell's kicks. I know that's a point I've brought up to you guys privately, where it's like, this is Boswell's lowest career percentage. I mean, even with that year where he was missing stuff left and right, he has missed a lot this year. I mean, I understand 2 were in that bad weather game in Baltimore 2 weeks ago, and that, he's tried a few that I've even questioned his range on a little bit, that have been on that edge of whether he's going to get the ball there or not. So, I mean, I feel like he's missed some more kicks that the Steelers have been willing to try this year. But really, I feel like he's only missed his standard 3 or 4, outside a few of those situations. So, I mean, if you take away some of the bad decisions and bad places they've put him this year, I still think he's having a good year. Also worth noting, he's still probably dealing with his groin injury a little bit. So,
Yeah. Well, Jeremy, both the previous bad year that he had, which I think was 2019, no, 18, and this one, that's what they have in common. He had lower body injury for both those seasons. So I feel like, he's trying to gut it out a little bit. And like I said, if they had gotten eliminated, I think he goes straight to IR. I don't think there's any way he's playing for the Steelers right now.
Yeah, bring back Matthew Wright for a week or something.
And like the thing is too is, I mean, you never know because I mean the thing is Kuntz has been good until these last string of weeks, but a big thing is going to be the trust. So we don't know what goes on in practice, we don't know what goes on in pregame. If they're not in sync in pregame, that can cause a big trust issue in game where he's a lot more hesitant. Mm-hmm. So I mean, that's one of those things where even if you have inside information like I do just about the position, it's tough to tell without, being there and watching every rep. So it's a lot more factors, but we know what Boswell is now. We've had him for so many years. I don't think people should really worry about him.
Yeah. Well, at least it wasn't that bad as, the week one, Cincinnati situation or anything. So,
yeah.
But
yeah, well, that was like, right up there with James Harrison snapping it over the guy's head.
Right. So, I mean, it hasn't been terrible, but Corey, like you said, definitely an area where they can look to improve going into next year. Boswell getting healthy, obviously, is the big one there. Healthy Boswell. I mean, he's the Wizard of Boz. It doesn't seem like he misses a thing when that dude's healthy. So let's kind of move on from the game and kind of the big news that has just shook the NFL community, really, the athletic world with what happened last night in Cincinnati, around 8:55 p.m. T. Higgins goes into Damar Hamlin. Damar Hamlin gets up and then falls. Just really scary situation. I didn't watch it live, but, if you go back, and watch that, I mean, I literally got chills when I saw him fall over. I mean, just the worst situation imaginable that could ever happen to a football player happened last night. Just kind of hard to believe, that there was even a game going on once that happened. It was like the world stopped for a second. I'll let you guys kind of chime in here, but I was just shocked, honestly, like just lost for words. I'd never seen something like that.
I'll let you take it, Will.
Thanks, man. No, it was, it's unsettling for a variety of reasons, not the least of which is it just reminds you that, that life and the NFL life is totally fragile. And that, the next time you're complaining about a guy deciding to retire early or opting out of a game because he's worried about, his future and family. And I think you have to take this kind of stuff into account. And, it's extremely unlikely because it is, some people have mentioned it's like millions of hits, over years, thousands of players. And first time that we've seen something like this in an NFL game. I guess NHL had a guy that got hit with a slap shot in the chest and had a very similar situation. But in soccer, I think earlier this year had one. So yeah, it's like I guess it's not impossible, but we'd like to not think about this stuff, right? So that was one thing. And as I said to my wife, I was like, I'm certain that I've been hit harder than that playing sports, in the chest. So do you think to yourself, wow, that's all it takes? Like that didn't really seem like a lot to me.
Right. Yeah.
And I knew it was coming and I was like, oh my God, that was it. Because I heard about it and then was catching up with the game. So I think it's just, one of those things it's a statement about life and about football and just crazy. And also I think he's someone that is a very easy guy to root for and a very, off the field kind of a great character guy as people who might listen to the show may not know, he's from Pittsburgh. He played at Central Catholic. He played I forget which high school, but he played high school football in Pittsburgh, played at Central Catholic, played at Pitt and at Buffalo. And, these guys know each other. Like the whole entire Steelers team basically knows him. So, and that's, the organization. So it hits very close to home. Corey's playing, so it's like you're engaged in this real life, situation like that all the time.
Yeah, I mean, we see injuries all the time, and it's one thing to see it happen on the practice field because everyone can see, everyone talks. When it's on the game field, pretty much the people on the field stay on the field at first, the people on the sidelines stay on the sidelines, and you have no idea what's happening. So I can't even, when someone, like, we had guys tear their ACLs in practice, and even then everyone goes mute. I mean, that's like, everyone feels for them. Everyone knows how hard they put the work in. I can't even imagine what the people on the field must have thought when, they had to watch their teammates have CPR on the field for 9 minutes.
Yeah.
Like, that is, I really, just something I cannot imagine. I can't imagine what their heads were at. I can't imagine what they were thinking. I can't imagine anything involving the situation. It's just a horrible event.
Yeah, I mean, just an event that is, Rick, echoed throughout the entire NFL community. Everyone's, talking about this right now, offering their thoughts and prayers, hoping the best. The last news I caught before we hopped on tonight was that he's still fully sedated, but apparently they've been able to reduce the ventilator he's using down to 50%, which is, a very good sign, according to the doctors and his uncle that gave an interview on ESPN that things are looking better, but, he still remains in critical condition. He's not out of the woods. So just, from us, all of us here on the podcast, we offer our thoughts and prayers to Damar and hope, just hope he can come back from this. Cause, Corey, you said, you guys deal with injuries and stuff all the times. I mean, rarely, I'm not to put myself in your shoes or whatever, but you can't think too many times some of those injuries, the guy might never get back up ever,
Yeah.
Injury is one thing, but life threatening injury, you just don't see that on a football field,
No.
ever almost or whatever. And just to see that in its rawness on the Monday Night Football broadcast of all places, it was just shell shocking to see or whatever. The one thing I did read was that, if that had happened anywhere else other than a football field, he probably might not be with us just because of all the medical personnel that is on the field for an NFL game, because they were, the trainers were out to him within seconds, going through their checks, the ambulance was there, very quickly, they started the CPR and AED almost right away once he didn't have a pulse. So, that happens anywhere else, we're probably talking, morning already, about this young guy not getting up. So just, again, our thoughts and prayers are with Damar Hamlin, hoping for the best. It doesn't matter what jersey you put on, what team you root for. Everyone's hoping for the best for this guy. And we hope for, good news here in the coming hours, because it's critical that he continues in these next few hours to get better and as we get better news. So.
Yeah, I'm told that 72 hours is sort of like the key time frame when this happens, that they'll probably keep him pretty closely attended and maybe even in critical care for at least that long, because it can recur or can cause other complications, whatever. So yeah, let's not forget about him just because he's there's good progress being made. That's wonderful, but yeah, it's rough. To that end, I'll be the first to say, like, I don't know, I completely agree with the decision to stop the game last night. I also wonder, what at the moment, it seems like they don't really have a plan for what to do. Like, they're just going to let it be a game that remains unfinished forever, which maybe is the right thing to do on a from the ethical standpoint, but from a standpoint of like how it affects all the other teams in the league who have worked so hard for months and months to try to, make it to the playoffs or, for their seasons. And even to the Bills who had a chance at the number 1 seed, and probably that goes away if they don't reschedule the game. I just wonder what you guys think in terms of the practical part of it. Now that, it appears that Damar Hamlin is out of the woods and now we have to think about the business of like what happens next. Wondering if you have any thoughts about that.
So
You go ahead, Corey.
yeah, so I think really the only thing they can do and probably should do is just, I mean, basically call the game as a tie, basically as a scratch forfeit, and then you basically just let the rest of everything else figure it out off that. Just play off each team having a tie. I don't think logistically there's any way to safely reschedule the game and have them play without adjusting an entire week of playoffs. And even if you had them replay, and I mean, there's no way that I don't think the players want to play the game. I don't think there's any way for them to safely play the game since, you know, they are going to bump back entire weeks to the playoffs. I don't see any route for them to play the game. So the only thing that makes sense is just, I mean, either you scratch the game and just act like it didn't happen, like record wise, where it's like no tie or anything. I'm not sure what goes into that, but in my head, a tie where it's just each team gets a tie in the scoreboard would make the most sense.
Yeah. Now you guys might correct me if I'm wrong here, but because they didn't make it out of the first quarter, I don't think they can qualify it as an actual NFL game. So at this point, I think what would happen would be just you don't see, you know, Buffalo or Cincinnati finish this game out and all, you know, they only play 16 games compared to everyone else playing 17 this year. I think that is the most realistic scenario. Corey, I think you hit it down the head. There's no way they can logistically pull off a game at this point. There's no way they can do it safely. I mean, these teams have games on Sunday. I mean, you know, Buffalo gets New England at home. You know, Cincinnati plays Baltimore. I can't remember Baltimore or at home again. You know, they have Baltimore coming to town. So, I mean, and that's in 5 days time. I mean, there's no way you're going to ask any NFL team to play that many games in a row. However, I do want to point it out that those damn schedule makers made it happen the COVID year. I mean, the Steelers played 2 games in the span of 3 days or something like that. So it's not that it hasn't been done.
Three games in 7, wasn't it, or something like that?
3 games in 7 days or something like that. And I just don't think, you know, this year that's realistic, because it's one thing, you know, with it being in illness or something and whatever, but this was a traumatic event and just an emotional toll. And I'm not saying playing 3 games in 7 days isn't, but this was like a psychological shock, you know, to the Buffalo Bills, you know, and Cincinnati Bengals system. So, I mean, what I think is always going to happen is just this game essentially never happened.
Okay, but let me give you a for instance here, because, you know, if you make the game a tie and you say it never happened, that's fine. But it basically gives Kansas City the number 1 seed in the bye that they pretty much were unlikely to get without this game ending in a tie.
Yeah.
So to me, my proposal is, as far as the number 1 seed is concerned, that they do it based on the loss column instead of the win column or the total record. Because if they do it based on a loss column, then it works out pretty much as it would have. If Buffalo wins, they get the number 1 seed. If they lose and Kansas City wins, they get the number 1 seed. And if they both lose, I think it might be Cincinnati that gets the number 1 seed. But at any rate, it works out kind of normally for all 3 of them, including the Chiefs, right? And then as far as the other 2, Cincinnati and Baltimore, I would propose that they're playing each other. I would propose that they're both in the playoffs anyway, right? Right. So I propose that you play them against each other in this last game, and they play for the division crown. Like, screw records. They're close enough. They're playing for the division title crown. The winner gets the 3 seed probably, and the loser gets the 6 seed probably, or the 5th seed even, I think. So yeah, so it's like then everything else works out exactly as it's supposed to. There's incentives for the teams, on either side of the game, for the New England game and for the Steelers game and for the Jacksonville, Tennessee game and for whatever the 4th one was that I'm forgetting right now, the Jets, Miami, right? Like, so all of that stuff plays out exactly as it would had Buffalo and Cincinnati played on Monday, and yet you still get some results and drama, and it isn't just like, well, the Bills get screwed and Baltimore doesn't get a chance to win the division, and nobody, Buffalo doesn't care about its game against New England. Like, there's so many bad things that could happen if they just make it a tie. It disincentivizes 5 games next weekend that would otherwise be really exciting.
I don't know if Cincinnati could, or not could, but because obviously they can, but I don't know if they would agree to a 1 to 6 seed swing. I don't really see them agreeing to something where that
on Sunday or Saturday rather, then it's really just a swing between, 2 and 5, 3 and 5. It's like it is something, but on the other hand, would they rather? I mean, I guess if I'm the NFL and trying to sell it to them, I'm like, well, would you rather play a game on 3 days rest? Because otherwise, that's the alternative, right? Because I think keeping, doing something in the interest of competition and making things fair that trumps, any one team. It's kind of like what's best for everybody. It seems to me, but maybe I'm overthinking it, and they'll just be like, Buffalo's going to just say, well, we could have had the number 1 seed, but forget it. Now we're just going to do, we'll win from the 2 seed. We don't care. I don't know.
Yep. I mean, one thing's for sure, and to kind of move our conversation forward here, if Pittsburgh wants to get into these playoffs, they do have to still win this Sunday, believe it or not. They don't just get a walk in like pretty much everyone else in the AFC gets to at this point. They're still one of the few teams still trying for a playoff spot, along with the New England Patriots and the Miami Dolphins. And
the Jacksonville Jaguars, even if they lose to Tennessee.
Yeah, that's right. Jacksonville still actually has a scenario path to the playoffs if they do not beat the Titans, which will just be the biggest travesty ever. But we're going to talk about that in a little bit. But the most common scenario for Pittsburgh to get in is obviously Pittsburgh has to win their game in Cleveland. The Buffalo Bills need to beat the Patriots at home, and then the Jets have to go to Miami to win a ball game down in Miami. So very plausible. We will talk about some of those games, but right now, let's talk about our upcoming matchup with the Browns. I just love the fact that we're starting to run the ball the best we've ever seen, and the fact that we get Cleveland's defense again. That just brings a smile to my face. Cleveland's defense is so porous against the run. They played Myles Garrett at inside linebacker a few times in this past matchup. I mean, that's how desperate they are. And I'll kind of start off right there. Myles Garrett is the man that makes that defense go if it does go. Got to know where that guy is. A lot of times he's going to be matched up on Dan Moore just because his combination of power and quickness is going to just have Dan Moore on skates most of the game. If we're not running at Garrett, which tends to be the one thing that you can do, you can run the ball at Myles Garrett sometimes. So, I mean, I would expect him to move across the line too, use him in some matchups, move him to the other side against Chuk Okorafor as well. So our tackles have to be on their A game. So Myles Garrett doesn't take over a game or try swinging a helmet at an unarmed quarterback or, anything along those lines. So what about you guys? There's some other matchups we need to look out for this week.
I think the biggest one is going to be, I'll just say our linebacking core as a whole, and Terrell Edmonds and Minka Fitzpatrick versus David Njoku. I mean, that dude tore us a new ass last game. It was ugly. So, I'm not even sure. Do you even throw Garrett and Bush back in there at the hope of them stopping him, because they couldn't do it last time? So might as well have some better run defenders in there and bank on your safeties being able to play all these outs and seams and corners that Njoku can run, where he gets moving downhill. So I think it's just going to be, I think we'll stop the run. I feel like we've got a pretty good grasp on that at this point in the season. Maybe not completely, but not letting them completely tear us up. I think the biggest thing after that is going to be making sure that he doesn't have a big one against us.
Yep.
To me, the matchup, it's complex. Both teams are going to try to run the bejesus out of the ball. You know, that's where this starts and ends for both these teams. But unlike last week, where the Steelers could basically bring all the defenders up to the line of scrimmage and dare, the Ravens to run, I don't think you can do that against Cleveland for two reasons. One is they'll still run it. They'll just break longer runs. If they break contained at the line of scrimmage, their guys will just score. So there's that. And then the second thing is their quarterback looked like he awakened from his coma last week and was suddenly able to hit balls down the field. And so it's like if you try to play some kind of like, bear front or six lineman front against Cleveland this week to try to slow down their run game, they're going to kill you. I mean, that to me is like this will be a really interesting study and seeing, we did this last week and that kept them from running the ball. So let's do it again. But the personnel situation there in the matchup is very different. On the Steelers side, I'm wondering if the Browns might benefit from basically taking a page out of the Steelers book from last week and more or less that same defense against it, because for starters, I think the Steelers would still spend 50% of the time, 70% of the time, still trying to run into that front before they adjusted. And secondly, it really puts a damper on Pickett being able to escape the pocket to the edges, because you got all these cats on the outside. One of them's Myles Garrett on the one side, and the other side you got an army trying to keep him from rolling out right. So I feel like if I'm Cleveland, I'm going to at least start with that defensive mindset to like stop the Steelers run and try to keep Pickett from escaping the pocket. We used to say that against Lamar Jackson, and it's sort of the same thing. I feel like we have now seen this progression with Kenny Pickett. It's like, well, at first he was throwing the ball away, and then he calmed down, but he wasn't really challenging anything. And then it was, focusing on running, and he's complementing that. And then it was like, well, we're focusing on running and doing really well, but now he has to come on at the end of the game, win the game. So these are all the things he's done. What hasn't happened yet is the defenses haven't really seen his film and been like, oh, he wants to do this versus that. And so we should try to do this kind of thing to take away what he wants to do or force him into bad decisions doing something else. Like they haven't really schemed for him, it feels like, right? So this would be an interesting opportunity for Cleveland to ruin Pittsburgh. I mean, from their standpoint, they just want to, knock the Steelers out. That's like it's going to be their Super Bowl on Sunday. So be prepared for that part of it.
I want to kind of piggyback off what Wilson, maybe not piggyback, but just throw this idea out there about Kenny Pickett getting schemed against, is that it might seem difficult to scheme against a guy like that, where a lot of his plays come out of structure and where it's not necessarily like you can look and, all right, when he, 3rd and 5, they like, we're throwing this out route and he's going to do this before the play. The way you scheme against a guy like Kenny, where especially since he's not a big time runner, is they could just bank on Russian 3 with Myles Garrett being one of them and Kenny getting happy feet in the pocket. But then now this time when he goes and scrambles, there's 8 guys in coverage. So all of a sudden there's no holes and there's nowhere to go with the ball. So that's going to be interesting to see. Now, I don't know if the Browns have that level of advancement on their defensive side of the ball, just because their defense has been pretty bad this year and they haven't stopped much of anything. But that's something to look for if they start bringing 3 guys early on, because then we can actually see if Kenny can adjust and hang in the pocket and just wait for it instead of bailing out of there like he has a tendency to do sometimes.
Yeah. JOK spy? Is that what you think?
What'd you say?
JOK is your spy?
I don't even know if you spy him. Just if you just drop everyone, I mean, just sitting 8 guys in zone and he's going to have to find someone. I mean, maybe he'll find someone at some point, but I'm sure they'd bank on Myles Garrett getting there at some time. So
safe bet.
Safe bet. I will say, I believe Jeremiah Okorowosu is injured. I don't know if he'll be playing this weekend. I thought I remember reading somewhere that he's on IR or won't finish the year. I thought I remember.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah, because he didn't. I'm almost positive that he did not play last week. He's on IR right now. He's on IR. So
I think I see it here.
Yeah, I mean, I kind of have to laugh at, when I looked at the Cleveland's depth chart at linebacker, there's a few guys that I kind of forgot were playing in the NFL. Deion Jones, I forgot he was a Brown. I mean, that's how forgettable he's been this year. for Cleveland. Reggie Ragland is still playing football. I mean, that's another guy who I was like, oh my God, are you for real? And then Tony Fields. I don't even know who that is. I think he was an outside linebacker for Arizona back in the day. I kind of remember him coming out, but I mean, he's a real undersized linebacker. I mean, all of 6 feet, maybe 225. So, I mean, if Pittsburgh can run the ball, I mean, we match up very well running the ball this week. They don't have guys that make plays against the run. That's been their Achilles heel all year long. So honestly, I was kind of shocked, the Browns pulled off a win this past week, and it was more because Carson Wentz is so freaking terrible than, the Cleveland Browns being good. But Will, I'll kind of go back to you. Your pick for this. Deshaun Watson is kind of awaking from his long slumber of, not playing football. I think it was 700 some days, by the time he actually started a game this year. The last time he took an NFL snap or something like that, which is absolutely nuts when you think about it. But, he threw 3 touchdowns. He wasn't super efficient with the ball, but, he's getting back to that level of play. I think more than anything right now, the Cleveland offense just doesn't have any real explosivity to their offense. So he's not really showcasing some of his talent, but still got to watch out for Amari Cooper. He only caught 3 balls, but 2 of them were for touchdowns, and they were across the formations where he lost guys and made plays. So while their wide receiving core does not have a ton of firepower, it can be deadly off play action, which I think is the biggest thing, Pittsburgh has to watch out for this week. David Njoku killed us in the last matchup on play action. This team is in sore trouble if we're asking Robert Spillane and Mark Robinson, to, cover guys, going backwards. They're great coming forwards, they're great downhill guys. But the moment you ask, Robert Spillane, to cover Chuba Hubbard, a few weeks ago, I mean, Hubbard made him look like a 3rd string linebacker, couldn't stay with him at all. So we better stay within the confines of our defense and not allow them to get a run going, or we are not going to win this game. It just feels like this is going to be the Browns Super Bowl, and the fact that they're going to try pull every cat out of the book to make sure Pittsburgh does not get back to the Super Bowl. Not to mention, I do not want to lose against the Browns in the manner that we lost, last year against them. So, or 2 years ago, on Roethlisberger's, demoralizing loss in our playoff game with Maurkice Pouncey. So that's the last thing I want to see on Sunday. So any other matchups you guys think we should touch on here going into this game?
I'll tell you what, I would like to say it's not really a matchup, but man, I like a lot of guys that are depth for Cleveland. Going to sneeze. They picked up Jalen Darden from Tampa Bay at wide receiver. They've been having issues with keeping guys healthy, but there's a guy that was sort of stuck on the depth chart in Tampa Bay behind a bunch of guys who are all really dependable vets that Tom Brady likes. So I think could have gotten some more. We're only using him as a kickoff returner, basically. But I have a feeling that he's a guy. If you saw his college tape, he was a volume. He was like a number 1 big volume receiver on the outside, despite his rather diminutive size. And he's got juice, man. So I wouldn't sleep on necessarily, a guy like that. In the Harrison Bryant, as far as the tight end, get beyond David Njoku, Harrison Bryant is another guy that has some receiving chops they could go to. You mentioned the defense is a little bit limited. They're playing some guys at linebacker, yes, who aren't that great, but Jermaine Carter, actually from Maryland, I thought was actually a pretty solid run defender, which is going to come in handy in this game. And they have Ben Stilley and Alex Wright, guys that are young, but that's the Cleveland's version of DeMarvin Leal and Mark Robinson, right? I mean, so those guys exist, and they could insert him in a game, and you're like, I never heard of this guy, and suddenly he's making plays for them. So I wouldn't sleep on it because they have nothing to lose, basically, except for trying to knock the Steelers out. My guess is, we're going to see an inspired bunch, and probably they'll come at the Steelers with everything they have.
Yeah, I would agree. So, getting away from our game here, there are quite a few games around the league that definitely mean some things for some teams trying to get to the playoffs. Let's kind of start on the NFC side of things. Seattle kind of looking on the outside looking in. They need a few things to go their way. Seattle's at home. They host the Los Angeles Rams. They are favored by 6.5. Will, let's have you start off on this one.
Maybe Corey remembers what this is called. Somebody has a theory, and it's the something Romo theory. And you know what I'm talking about? It relates to teams who have a chance to clinch the playoffs with a win playing against an inferior opponent in the last week, and how there's a shocking number of them that actually lose these games. Last year was like the perfect example with the Indianapolis Colts getting knocked playoffs with a loss against, at that time, the worst team in the NFL, Jacksonville. This just feels like one of those games to me where Seattle just needs to win and they're in, and yet they're going to figure out a way to lose to the Rams, who have lost more games than any defending Super Bowl champ in a single season, but have actually looked a little bit more lively since Baker Mayfield took over. I just have a feeling that they want to go off on a high note for the season, and that this is a game that they can and will win against Seattle.
All right, Corey, how do you feel about this one?
I've just got the same kind of vibe on this. The Rams, they're kind of finding a little bit of a rhythm on offense with Cam Akers. I mean, I don't know where the hell he was at the beginning of the season, but he's ripped off a few nice games back to back. And I mean, I feel like just the way to put it is, I just think the Rams would love to play spoiler. They've had a really bad season, probably want to go out on a high note here. And I mean, Seattle still isn't that good. We know this. I mean, they've got some talent in places, but this isn't a team that really inspires you, I would say. So I think I'm just going with the Rams, just more so that they don't want to, give themselves up and kind of go out as sad as the season's been so far.
Yeah, funny enough, believe it or not, that there is an interesting line to this game. If Seattle wins this game, believe it or not, they actually pick higher in the upcoming draft, because I think it's the Seahawks that actually have the Rams pick this year, ironically enough. So they could be playing more than just for a win and for a playoff spot. They could be playing, believe it or not, for a higher draft spot with a win. Found that kind of amusing as I was picking out some of these games for us to pick. I kind of have to fall back, though. I think Seattle's going to win this. I know the Rams have looked better of recent, but I really thought, last week's Jets and Seattle game would be close, and really Seattle kind of shut them down from the get-go. I know Seattle's kind of struggled over the last half of the year. I think with a good game last week, I think they're going to have a good game plan. I think they're going to come in. They know what they need to do to potentially get to the playoffs in a year where, no one thought they'd do anything, if you would have gone back to week one with them trading away Russell Wilson and, having to start Geno Smith of all things. They've turned into a pretty decent football team. They're not great. They're borderline good, but I just think they find a way to get it done this week. I think Pete Carroll will have him believing in playing for something. Let's keep it on the NFC side of things. Probably the most interesting game of the week, and I can't tell you the last time this game meant so much to both of these teams this late in the year. Detroit has to head to Green Bay for a chance for Detroit to get back to the playoffs, of all things. Detroit's had quite the memorable run this year. Green Bay has been on fire lately, most because their defense has actually chose to wake the hell up and decide to play some football this year. Corey, let's start with you on this one. Green Bay is a 4.5-point favorite right now. What do you think about this one?
Well, I forgot to mention it last time, but I wanted to congratulate Will on his great week in the poll this week.
How bad was it? I didn't look.
You scored 50%.
Oh, hey, 50.
Hey.
In fairness, I'm behind a little bit, for the overall title. and I thought I'd better kind of take some chances this week, or there's no chance of me surpassing the guys ahead of me.
Yeah. Yeah, I was just chuckling. Yeah, you gave
Uh-huh.
me grief a few times this year, so I wanted to make sure I got mine in.
Justifiably so.
But I'm back onto the matchup. It's one of those things that you don't know how much longer Aaron Rodgers is going to play. I feel like right now you can expect him to play next year, but if this is the end, which it could be, I don't think he goes out on a loss to the Lions. So that's my reason for picking him here. That was my reason for picking him against the Vikings last week. That worked out pretty well, so I'm sticking with it.
The Lions had one win when they played the Green Bay the last time. They won that game against Green Bay, and they're 7-2 since then. I like the Lions to win this game. I actually think the Lions have a good chance of winning this game and not making the playoffs. I guess if Seattle wins, they won't. I picked Seattle to lose, so maybe the Lions will figure out a way to sneak in. That would be an incredible story. But yeah, I just division game, which are always hard to pick, and it's unlikely that any team in the division wins twice in one season. But I do think the Lions match up kind of well against Green Bay, and it'll be interesting test of that team. I said before the season that their goal should be to get built to the point where by the end of the season you think they have almost everything they need except for maybe an elite quarterback or one more draft class or free agent class. So I think this is kind of how they're setting themselves up very well for next year. They might be my pick to win the division next year, and I'll let them go off on a high note whether they make the playoffs or not.
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned next year. I mean, Detroit Lions have 2 first-round picks next year, and they're going to be picking top 7 because they have they have the Rams pick. Excuse me.
Okay.
I misspoke earlier on the Seattle one, but I can't remember what that was tied to. But they've got 2 first-round picks next year. One's going to be a top 8 lock, and the other's going to be in the teens if they find a way not to get to the playoffs. I mean, talk about a team that's going to have some legitimate firepower to continue to improve, a roster that, has gotten much better over a short span of time. I don't know. This one's tough for me to pick because I kind of am on the lines of both of you. This could be one of Aaron Rodgers' last games, but Detroit's been playing so well. But I just feel like the Packers have been playing so much better on defense lately. I think it's a close game. And there have been times where Detroit has struggled to move the ball this year. When they haven't been able to, they've turned the ball over some or whatever. The Packers have had something like an incredible 11 forced turnovers in their last 4 games or something like that. I think was the stat I read before this. So I'm going to go with the Packers on this. I just think they're playing really good complementary football right now. The ball is bouncing their way the right time of the year. So I like the Packers to win this one. And I can't remember if I told you, but the line was 4.5 for Green Bay. But
can I throw one more Detroit
of course
on this game? I would just like to shout out a little bit to James Houston, the 4th, who probably won't win Rookie of the Year or Rookie Defensive Player of the Year, but dude has 8 sacks in 6 games. It's not even just that. He's not even starting for them. He's not even playing the majority of the snaps. Let me get a snap count for you. That's out of this world. Here, let's see. Defensive snaps. Where are they? Where are you? Last I saw, he was like I think he had 6 snaps with 44. 6 sacks with 44 snaps or something crazy. That's why I said I just want to see. So I just feel like, first of all, Detroit drafted, with like the top 5 pick, top 3 pick, Aiden Hutchinson, who's been solid and, good rookie pass rusher. And it's not like they didn't get their money worth out of that. But man, they have this, guy that they didn't even play for the first 2/3 of the season or 3/4 of the season, who's come on like gangbusters. And I know that, I interviewed him, before the season, saw him, and I thought that's a guy that I would draft because of his position flexibility. I think he could play inside linebacker as well as he plays pass rusher, really. But he's been been quite a find. I know that Corey's a fan. Also, you can say something if you like while I look for the snap counts, which I can't find suddenly.
Yeah, me and Will proudly drafted him. I can't remember which mock
With-
draft it was. Was it Bill Carroll's?
Yeah, we got him late.
Yeah, we were like, this is exactly how long, because Bill Carroll's a huge HBCU guy, and we were scrolling through, and it's right after we found that UCLA D tackle. Like, his name's slipping my mind right now, but I'm like, screw it, let's just see.
Drake Jackson.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and I'm like, screw it, let's just see who else slipped. We're like, James Houston's on the board in the 7th round. Like, what the hell? We immediately sent the pick in. We were ecstatic. We probably would have taken him in the 5th if we noticed he was there. But yeah, me and Will loved him coming out. I remember that. And like, I mean, oh, Will still here? Okay. Well, like I said, I mean, he's gonna be a stud for them. I really hope he starts for them next year. I see no reason for him not to. So Lions are looking up.
Yeah, they definitely are. It's just kind of a gut feeling. I think Green Bay finds a way to win, whether it's on a Crosby field goal, who knows? But well, let's swing it over to the AFC side of things. The last division leading division winner is still up for grabs, believe it or not. The Tennessee Titans have to go to Jacksonville, take on the Jaguars. Jaguars are a 6.5-point favorite. I'll start off with this one. Personally, I don't think this game should be close. I think Jacksonville has the firepower to continue kind of doing what they've been able to do over the last few games this year. Trevor Lawrence is playing much better this year. He's distributing the ball well. Travis Etienne playing extremely well for them on the ground right now, being able to contribute in the air and everything. So I think Jacksonville will win by multiple touchdowns here. One, because they're playing against Josh Dobbs. I mean,
oh man, former Steeler.
I know. I understand he looked okay the other night. I can't remember who Tennessee was at, they were playing Dallas or whatever, and he looked okay. He was able to move the offense a little bit, but it sure sounds like the Titans are going to be on their last leg at multiple spots. It's going to be a big dose of Derrick Henry. They can't do that all game long. So I like Jacksonville here. Corey, how do you think about this one?
So I think they can do that all game long. I think they can run Derrick Henry all game long. But my real motive for choosing the Titans is that maybe kind of like the Steelers. They're one of those zombie teams. Like they might seem out, they might seem really injured, but they just somehow find a way to scrap out a game where they play with someone that's supposed to be way better than them, but they end up losing like these dumb lower level games. Well, the Jags are no longer a lower level team.
That's true.
And this is a big game. I'm going to go with the experience here with Mike Vrabel and the majority of that Titans roster, even if they're young at certain positions. And I think they're going to win a nail biter on the back of Derrick Henry.
Gotcha. Understood. Yeah, I mean, I just think it'll be a very close game here. So Will's coming back to the broadcast here. Will, when we were talking about Tennessee traveling to Jacksonville, Jacksonville is a 6.5-point favorite. How do you feel about this game?
Josh Dobbs is starting this game for Tennessee. Am I correct?
That's what I just said. Yep.
I mean, this could be another one of those like flip the script on Jacksonville, but I think, their coaches, if their coach has any kind of a brain, he's going to come to Jacksonville and be like, remember last year when you had the chance to knock somebody out and how hard you played? That's how this team's going to come at you, blah, blah, blah. So yeah, I like Jacksonville narrowly in this game. Probably going to be a good game.
Yeah, I agree. Another AFC matchup, which means a lot, for the Steelers' chances to get in. The Jets are traveling to Miami. I'll start off on this one too. I think the biggest storyline here is, Miami's probably and very likely starting Skylar Thompson again. Teddy Bridgewater injured his hand in the last game. Sure sounds like Tua's kind of shut down for the year unless they get to the playoffs, just kind of with his concussion history and with just how bad Miami's managed that whole situation with him. Right now, Miami's favored by 1. this game is a true coin flip, if you ask me, because I think the Jets would love to play spoiler alert here. And that's ultimately where I'm going here. I think Mike White knows he played poorly, and really that whole team played poorly last weekend at Seattle. I think they want to come back. They want to end the season on a good note. I know they can't get in the playoffs, but ending the year on a win would keep the positive momentum going into next year for a team that really, at one point looked like they were going to be a shoo-in for the playoffs, but kind of stumbled late in the season. So I like the Jets here, even though they've been a little inconsistent here lately. So I'll take the Jets here. Will, how do you feel about this game?
Is it possible that neither team wins? Can I pick a tie?
Well, yeah, I mean,
Can I pick a scoreless tie? How long has it been in the NFL since there was a scoreless tie? Anybody know? I do not know the answer to this question.
a scoreless tie? I don't know about that, but
Probably back to like the 40s.
I'll tell you what, man. I think actually 1943. Pretty good guess. 71 years.
wow.
1943. The Giants and Lions.
Did that happen to fall on your birthday, Will?
It did not.
Hot shot.
Oh, shots fired. I see how this is going to go. Right on. Right on. I noticed your team did better without you this year. I didn't know if you noticed that.
Another hot
Hey,
shot.
I honestly, Skyler, oh my God. There are things to like about his, he has some tools. He's not like the least athletic person or whatever, but yeah, against the Jets defense, I don't know. If the Jets put in the effort to play hard this game, I don't see Miami doing very much to win this game. And I feel like Mike White is not much better at this stage of the season in his career, but that maybe they have just a hair more, running the ball or whatever. So yeah, I don't think either team is going to, take the under, take a sedative if you must watch, and expect it to be low, the first score wins maybe.
Very well could be. Corey, what are your thoughts on this one?
Yeah, I think the Jets defense is a lot more daunting to Skylar Thompson than the Dolphins defense is to Mike White. Like I said, I don't think they're like Will, you said, I don't think there's going to be many points scored, but when it comes down to it, I'd place my money on Mike White and the Jets offense and the Jets defense giving them maybe a short field over the Dolphins doing much of anything to win this game. I mean, they're always alive to like maybe get 2 80-yard bombs with not even bombs, 2 80-yard drag routes cribbed by Jalen Waddle and Tyreek Hill. But the Jets are pretty disciplined. They're across the board pretty good tacklers. They pair up really well linebacker wise against the Dolphins. They have a lot of like Quan Alexander can still move. CJ Mosley can really take advantage of some poor pass blockers and throw his body around in there on the blitz. So I think the Jets just match up pretty well with them with how the Dolphins currently stand.
Yep. All right. Kind of last matchup. Wow. Excuse me. Last matchup in the AFC that matters to Pittsburgh is the Patriots travel to Buffalo to take on the Bills. Right now, I was looking for a line out there, but because there is some uncertainty, with the game we mentioned earlier, I was unable to find an early line on this game. So I guess we're going to kind of take this one straight up, kind of think how this one goes here. We'll let you start off here. How do you think?
And impossible to pick without knowing what's on the line for the Bills. I don't think New England's really any good, but if they're playing against a team that is going to rest its quarterback and anybody else who's injured and basically effectively take a bye week, then I would have to take New England, So I guess let me make that pick because that kind of feels that's what's going to happen here. That the Bills are going to try to regroup a little bit and not really have that much to play for. So I'll take New England.
All right, Corey.
So I'm taking the Bills regardless, even if they sit all their starters, because for one, they're a pretty deep team. But I feel like they're going to, especially if it's the backups, these are guys that maybe aren't necessarily going to play a ton in the upcoming weeks. I think they're really going to lay their body on the line and play their ass off to try and win this game. I feel like it's just a game that you really don't want to drop after a tragedy like that. Like you always want to win for your guy. It's kind of the
Yeah, I'm
mentality.
sorry. It's kind of like their Franco game. So maybe I'm going to flip that and say that, yeah, that New England doesn't have enough. Sorry, Corey, go ahead. I'll let you talk about that.
Yeah, you're okay. It almost makes me want to pick the Bills more if they have all their backups in, because those guys can go out and play however hard they want. Like they know that their run it's not over after this week, but they're back to being backups next week, and they can go out and play as hard as they damn please. So I think I'm going the Bills, probably in a tough game, but I think they still claw it out.
Yeah, Corey, you kind of have my feeling. I feel like this team is going to galvanize itself around, Damar Hamlin. Hopefully, as the week goes on, there's better and better news about his condition, and they're going to say, we need to go out there and win this one for our brother. You both kind of made good points. It's like their Franco game. They don't want to, have a big letdown after, what happened on Monday or whatever. So I like the Bills here. I do think New England is going to throw everything like the kitchen sink there. I think the one thing that's hurting the Patriots right now is Stevenson is not playing his best football right now for the Patriots. He's been a little up and down these past few weeks. When that team has played its best football with Stevenson, they've been very tough to beat, but I just haven't seen Stevenson play. For some reason, I can't remember his first name. So we're going to just
Ramondre.
Thank you. I knew it was something that I was forgetting that I wasn't going to remember off the top of my head. But yes, Ramondre Stevenson, just a guy who hasn't kind of balled out like he did during the middle portion of the year. Just kind of think that keeps him down in this one. Let's go ahead and jump to our 5-star matchup of the week. Pittsburgh visiting the Cleveland Browns. Right now, the Browns are a 2.5-point favorite. They're probably getting that off their kind of bigger win over Washington this past week. Will, how about you start us off on this one?
Great. It's a home game. They're playing with the playoffs on the line. That thing I said earlier about that, you just have to win, and you're playing against a team that shouldn't be as good as you. That can be a really tricky game to win. It feels like everything is in place for the Steelers. The teams they need to lose are going to be in kind of adverse situations, and they're playing at home against a team that's already eliminated. It's like, is it almost like too good? Is it like a setup for us to be disappointed? I don't know. I'm trying to picture how I think this game will go. As I said earlier, I think that the Steelers probably will try to, stack the box against the run, basically, for lack of a better way to put it, against Cleveland. And I'm worried that could lead to some big runs and some, them throwing the ball down the field. And to me, the game will come down to how quickly will the Steelers attack down the field instead of just thinking they're going to run the ball all over Cleveland and not ever work off of that, right? So in other words, if it's the 2005 playoff strategy where the other team expects you to run, and then you come out throwing the ball a little bit and then put it away with the run later, this would be an excellent game plan against Cleveland this week, I think. But it's riskier, if it doesn't work and Myles Garrett knocks your quarterback out, then it could be trouble. I will say that the Steelers win a little differently than they have the last 2 weeks, that they get a lead early and hang on because their season is on the line and they're playing at home. So I'll make it the Steelers 20-17 over the Browns, and just it's going to be a nail biter till the very end.
Gotcha. Will, thank you for correcting me there, by the way. This whole episode, I believe I've been saying Pittsburgh's traveling to Cleveland, but it is a Pittsburgh home game, so I apologize. I've been saying that wrong for most of the episode. Corey, how do you think this is going to play out?
I think there's still some bets on the defense that remember not only what the Browns did to us in the playoffs in 2021, but also they put 29 on us earlier this year, and that's a slap in the face from the Cleveland Browns. So I feel like the defense is going to come out hot. The whole team is playing with a lot of moxie right now. It just seems like there's an aura around them. You know, maybe the things don't fall our way for the playoffs, but it feels like, you know, it's almost destiny that we clawed our way back and finished with a winning record. So I think I'm kind of with Will here. I think we might score a few early, might get up 14-0 and let them slowly drag their way back. And, you know, we just have to watch in terror as we settle for field goals in the second half and punt the ball while they look like they start rolling. But I think we get a narrow win. I'll call it 24-20.
Ooh, you've putting us over 20, the elusive over 20 points for the Pittsburgh Steelers this year. I almost think I've got to take the Browns now. Just joking. I will say this. I think Pittsburgh rides its way to a win on all these young guys that are playing with some real fire right now. You know, Najee Harris playing like a man possessed these past few weeks. You know, even Jalen Warren, you know, he's running hard. Kenny Pickett making those off-script plays this past week. You know, for love of God, can we throw the ball to George freaking Pickens some more? Just, you know, DeMarvin Leal and Mark Robinson playing better, making this a better run defending unit. It just seems like all the right things are happening at the right time of the year to go get Mike Tomlin's damn 9th win. You know, stupid freaking record. Drives me crazy still to this day. But I like Pittsburgh in this game. I'm going to go 2014. I think that seems right too. I just don't see us putting up more than 2 touchdowns in any game that we've played this year. I think very rare for that to happen, especially late in the year. It's AFC North football. Both teams are going to be running it a lot. You know, you guys kind of chastised me on my parlay I put in this past week, thinking that Kenny Pickett was going to go throw for 175 yards. You know, he finished 25 yards short of that, even on his, you know, good last drive, you know.
Yep.
So
see, I picked my score based on my scenario for the game of them attacking early. That's why I thought maybe they could put up some points.
I think I might have predicted the score now that you mentioned that. I might have to go back and check, but I might have.
I think you did. It just felt like we were heading right down the Broadway of what you predicted. I mean, this week, I just feel like logically, like if I'm not a Steelers fan and I'm not thinking, you know, about any kind of, I'm not including anything about like the vibe or the intangibles of this game. I would say that Cleveland with Deshaun Jackson is probably going to play better than they did when they hung that big number on the Steelers earlier in the year. And so I think that they might have trouble winning this game if you just look on paper. But, you know, as we all know, a game's not played on paper. Because it would be really, you know, the cleats would just put holes in them and, you know, like it'd be difficult for a certain aspect.
The very literal definition of playing on paper. I like that. But yeah, so, you know, it looks like, you know, all 3 of us are taking Pittsburgh this week. So hopefully Pittsburgh can go out there, you know, put their best foot forward, kind of see how the dice falls, you know, whether playoffs, you know, are part of the path this year or not. It'd be really nice to see Pittsburgh to go out on a win, try to build some momentum for next year. I guess the only
trip to Buffalo or Kansas City in your future.
Yeah, I know, right? It's like, which team are we going to go get our asses kicked by in the wild card round if we get there? So
can I say one more thing?
Yeah, absolutely.
The show ends. I know it's gone on forever, and I appreciate anybody's patience who's still listening to the show. This season reminds me, you guys are too young. It really reminds me of the 2002 season. That's 20 years ago. For those of you who can do math, this is the season that, you know, the year before the Steelers beat the defending Super Bowl champion Ravens in the playoffs, and maybe the best Cordell Stewart playoff game of all time. They just look like, wow, Cordell's starting at quarterback, and he's rejuvenated his career, and the defense looks like it's building something, yada yada. You know, with Kendrell Bell, Rookie of the Year, and then, you know, they kind of somehow, in like a short, you know, into the next season, they sort of lost their mojo a little bit. Started off that season, Cordell was really rough, and they brought Tommy Maddox in, and the thing about that season reminded me of this one was, you started off with really ineffective quarterback play and a challenged offense to do anything. Then you bring this guy in who is at least polished and, distribute the ball as a quarterback. And it seemed to, rally the team, and they suddenly reeled off a bunch of wins. And they snuck into the playoffs. And in the playoff game, they got their defense, the holes on their defense showed up where they gave up, huge lead to the Cleveland Browns, and then managed to have a comeback win to win it, and then lost the following week on a, phantom roughing the kicker penalty against Deshae Townsend. But my point was like, off with low expectations, and then they kind of get on a roll, and you start thinking, okay, like this team can be interesting to watch, and this quarterback is like, there's no dissing Kenny Pickett to compare to what Tommy Maddox was doing that season with what Pickett is doing this season. They're very similar, and the hope is that Pickett is going to get better instead of worse the following season. But my message is just to say it's amazing how quickly things change year to year, man. Because 2001 they looked great with Cordell Stewart. 2002 they looked terrible with Cordell Stewart. Tommy Maddox came on and looked great. 2003 Tommy Maddox is terrible, and they finished bad enough to get Ben the next year. So enjoy it while it lasts, because you never know how long it's going to go.
You guys, don't let Will put a dampener on your spirits. He's just mad that me and Jeremy are about to nail the preseason record prediction. He predicted us with 6 wins. Don't let him pull you
That's
down.
right. Yeah. I think both of us predicted this winning record for Mike Tomlin, and Will tended to shorthand that and go with I think it was 6-11. Yeah, since we play 17 games now instead of 16. I'm still getting used to that myself a little bit, but yeah, hopefully Pittsburgh can show up and do what they need to do. So with that being said, thank you all for joining us for another episode here at the SteelerFury.com podcast. More than anything, just continue to pray and hope that we get better news this week as the week goes on for Damar Hamlin. Despite all the football noise you hear this week and playoffs, Super Bowl runs, all that, a young man's life still hangs in the balance. That's the most important thing. This is a game still at the end of the day. Hopefully we continue to get good news, and he can be on a path to recovery. So with that being said, hopefully the Steelers can put forth their good feet this week and get a win. So dare I say it, because I haven't said it at all this year, but here we go, Steelers. Here we go.
We'll be talking to you next week, either on the playoff edition or on the season wrap up. That's where we're at.
Yeah, right. All right. Thank you again, gentlemen, and good night, Steeler fans.
Right on. Good night. Thanks, guys.